Blanket NDAs are now illegal. What can you finally tell us about your former employer? They misused pandemic assistance funds. One of my old bosses reprimanded an employee after the employee called HR to file a complaint about him. This is because the HR employee happened to be a friend of the boss in question. And the HR employee blabbed about it to the boss. The boss did not get fired, but he did get reassigned not long after. Not sure what happened to the HR employee. A publication I worked for completely embezzled from the parent company. The editor-in-chief hired their best friend as creative director. Creative director contracts her husband as a men's fashion editor, when the publication had no men's fashion section and was not a fashion-related pub. He was paid thousands monthly on retainer and almost never came into the office. And if he did, he never did any work. On top of that, he was paid usage fees for travel images he took and were printed. That family took a one-week trip to an African country for a story, brought their child, and submitted a $40,000 expense report after for their trip. Oh, then there were the future invoices for her husband's usage fees for his photos, while they were being paid to be there because it was for a story. Other editors-in-chief from other publications were given a $25,000 clothing budget every year, and a daily black car driver to take them to the office. When I worked for another title in the building, that EIC submitted a very high expense report which included his groceries. The company would even provide interest-free down payments to EICs for homes, but they stopped doing that. Meanwhile, they ran multiple rounds of layoffs a year, consolidated staffs so they worked across multiple titles, and paid peanuts to regular employees. I was laid off from that company twice within 2 years, and they didn't vest my 401k match because both times I missed the cutoff by months. They laid off 160 people so they could afford to give the COO a 30% raise. 2 different places I worked created roles for minorities with a plan to not retain them so they can hire more minorities to satisfy quotas. If you were any good, they would promote you to a real job and hire another minority. Someone in HR told me, the reports only show how many the company hires, not how many they keep. I worked for a school district that changed grades to boost graduation rates. I want production workers, like those who worked with the Duggars, etc., to spill some major tea. The weather forecasting company I worked at a while back didn't actually forecast, they just copy-pasted products from the National Weather Service and slapped their logo on it. How much time do you have? Miramax employees. He's actually a really nice guy. Former Marine. Took about 6 months off when he adopted a young boy to get him acclimated into the family. The president put the embezzled money into a separate account called advertising. Barclays would refund those charges for exceeding your overdraft if it was clear you had a good income or decent savings. But they'd enforce those charges on the poor single mothers who were struggling to live. The filtered water dispenser in the cafeteria produced floaty chunks of goodness for too long a time. I had to drink bottled water. Workers routinely chose not to wear hard hats while working on site. Then again, that's probably not a big deal in an office building. Worked for a renewable energy startup that casually committed tax fraud. Screwed around with start of construction for IRS tax incentives by excavating holes and then filling them up when the rules changed. Definitely below board. They also cooked the books and screwed over every partner on a deal they ever had. GPs are just 5 greedy criminals. I hate they are still in business and making money. You can't discuss your wages. Bitch. We all knew you were hiring people at a higher wage than people who had been there for years and had more qualifications. Our sales department deliberately used deceptively vague language when selling extremely expensive travel packages to disabled passengers. They routinely left caregivers stranded with no accommodation other than the floor, or sleeping in the same bed as their patients. They also routinely failed to provide accessible bathrooms for disabled passengers. They also lost, damaged wheelchairs and mobility aids. There was little to no sympathy for these passengers and their caregivers when they rightly complained. When I tried to raise the issue with higher-ups, I was labeled a troublemaker. I left the company back in 2019, but I know nothing has changed in regards to sales. The price for the cheapest trip offered was over $2,000 CND per person for a 2-day trip. The average booking was $8,000 for a 5-day holiday. They charge much more now. Can you imagine paying $8,000 and not being able to shower? Or your mobility aid being lost, then when you complain you are told you were never promised anything, only, we will do our best, or, that shouldn't be a problem. Quote, fucking disgraceful. Monfort Meatpackers in Greeley, Colorado killed lame and diseased cattle and turned them into hamburgers. Once I saw a guy on a forklift impale a lame cow and pierced her side, and then lifted the creature up, in pain and bleeding heavily, to bring to the slaughter floor. Ever find out in statewide news that your employer ed you out of a massive bonus? 9.5 years ago, the company I worked for at the time was sold. The former owner set aside what averaged to $20,000 per employee as a gift to everyone working there at the time. Statewide news reported on it, citing the dollar figure and saying it was scaled by years of service. This was how most of us found out about the bonus. The next day, most of us received $100, $350 bonuses. Mine was 1/70th what I was supposed to get. Now, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But what the hell, right? A few people rolled in with 6-figure vehicles over the next 2 weeks. This was also after many of us worked ridiculous unpaid overtime for the previous year. And raises were 0% for the year. Oh, and the profit-sharing annual bonus was a fraction of the previous year's because executive management changed the way the metrics were calculated. So, they put out a story about philanthropy and screwed us all out of tens of thousands. If you think that's bad, the company did something 100x worse a few years later. I won't share that one. Too identifying. Glad I don't work there anymore. And most of the executives probably already have a large pit reserved for them in hell. That the founder is purposely bankrupting the companies so no inheritance will be left to the family.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.